Hi, everybody. How's it going? I'm Melissa Thomas, and I'm excited to be subbing in for Candy today. Hi, everybody. I'm Melissa Thomas, and I am excited to be subbing in for Candy today. I'm going to be talking about building craft retreats and how that can help your business. So I'm trying to go live from my laptop, which is new because I wanted to share a spreadsheet so that you can see that. I should be able to see your comments here and everything too, so we'll see how that goes. But if you have any questions or you want to know a little bit about the small scale craft retreats that I do, let me know. I started hosting craft retreats a few years back. I initially partnered with Candy on, I think, two of the first craft retreats that I did. And what Candy realized was that she wanted to host really big craft retreats in like hotels and hotel ballrooms. And what I realized was I didn't want to do that. What I wanted to do was host smaller retreats in more intimate locations, maybe destination locations or places like that. I looked at hosting a retreat at a Airbnb or that style, kind of a vacation rental in the Charleston area. Many of you know that I lived in Charleston for a few years, and so I wanted to be able to host a retreat there and kind of draw back some of the customers that I had there. And I started looking at rentals. So, a couple of things. Hey, Rosie, I'm so glad you love my retreat. Yay! A couple of things that you can look for is look first to see if in your location there are scrapbook retreats, craft retreats, places that would host something like this. We have several in our area. Rosie mentioned we have a really big one in Temple, Texas. Hey, Candy. But we've got some smaller ones, and we've actually got one that's local. It's literally 10 minutes down the road from my house. Now, the problem with some of those smaller places is that they might charge too much money, and therefore you might price yourself out of the market because you have to add on cost for swag bags because that's how you're going to make sales, right? Is you're going to add a $50 swag bag, and then you need to add on if there's costs for food, or how you're going to work out food, or maybe everybody's going to be on their own. And then you also need to add on money for your time and energy and effort. So sometimes the smaller the location, the more expensive it is, and therefore you make less money. So you've really got to do the math on this and figure it out. Especially at some of these scrapbook retreats and scrapbook places, they're used to charging a certain amount. And when you come in and say, hey, I can't make any profit if you charge that much. Now, you can definitely come to them and say, hey, I can't make any profit. This is my business. Is there any way we can negotiate? I'll fill the house, but I'd like to pay this much, or I'd like to get Thursday night for free, or, right, think about ways that you can negotiate because even though they have a posted price, usually, especially when you're dealing with a person, everything's up for negotiation. Now, when you're looking at a site like Airbnb, or I use Island Realty, which is like a realtor rental company in Charleston, they're not going to be able to negotiate with you. So then at that point, you've really got to look at what's the capacity of the house, what's the price of the house, and how do those numbers break down. So I'm going to show you my spreadsheet, I hope, to show you how that works. Yeah, negotiation is a big part of this, and not being afraid to ask because for instance, I had a retreat in the fall. She was willing to give me Halloween weekend for a discounted rate, and I was like, yeah, I'm not doing it Halloween weekend. But what about the weekend before? I see you also still have that open. And she was like, okay, I'll give it to you for the same discounted rate. I'm like, cool. So now for this next year, I said, okay, we want to do it again. I want to do it the same weekend. Can we get the same rate? And she was like, well, I've had to go up on my prices, but it was such a marginal increase. I was like, okay, cool, great. we can manage that. Now that place has a capacity for like 30 people. I don't think we'll get to that capacity, but it has a larger capacity. So I've got some notes, but I think it's really important to, if you're thinking about doing this, to have people go ahead, once you've kind of picked a weekend, have people do a $50 deposit and make it refundable if the event doesn't make. So that's how I did my first retreat, is I said, this is the weekend. I need 6 people to come, and if we don't get the 6 people, I'll give everybody their $50 back, right? Now, I was going to tell them my alternative was, or I can keep your $50 and do a retreat in a box, right? We'll talk about that in a minute. But I was lucky the first time when I did the Charleston retreat, and it made, and we had people come and people brought friends, and that's always a great thing to do, is consider some kind of incentive when people bring friends, because that's a really, great thing for people to do, and you want them to spread that word, about your retreat. So, $50 deposit, and then start looking for locations that work for you. Now, I am known in our group to have Airbnb magic. I can look at the pictures and I could determine like the layout of the house and like where the bathrooms are and how much space there is and whether it's going to work for us. Not everybody has that magic mojo. But what I'd like to do is share my screen, and this is the new part that I'm still learning. So let me see. Polls. This is new. I'm excited that we can go live from our laptop, but I'm still kind of trying to figure out what I'm doing. That's okay. I might not be able to share my screen, but that's okay. Post details. No. All right. Maybe I had to make that choice at the beginning, and I chose for you to see me instead of my spreadsheet. But I'll kind of talk you through my spreadsheet. So what I do is I say, okay, if this is the price, for instance, I had a place that was $1,300 approximately, and it could sleep 10 people, but I'm one of those 10. So I'm going to take the 1,300 and I'm going to divide by 9, right? Not by 10, because I want to take myself out. I don't want to pay for this weekend. I need this weekend paid for me. So 9, right? So then that gives us, a number. And then we're going to add, for that retreat, the one I do there, I include food for the weekend. So I add $150, 50 for swag, 50 for food, and 50 for my time, energy, and travel expense, because I do have to fly there as well. And that usually comes out really, really well. Like everything works well. And then I try to figure out, okay, what does that look like if I charge X amount? Am I going to make any extra profit? Is there any kind of buffer here? I'll also talk about the pros and the cons of the place. So I put this all in a spreadsheet and I say, okay, what are the pros? Maybe it's comfy. It has lots of space. Maybe it has a private pool. Maybe it's right on the beach, right? Maybe it can sleep like 18 people, that's fabulous. But maybe some of the cons is that I'm going to have to bring some tables in. Or maybe there's bunk beds. Bunk beds. Hi, Karen. Welcome. Bunk beds are a no-go for adult women. I can sleep on the bottom bunk, but I definitely cannot sleep on the top bunk. And a lot of these vacation homes are made for families traveling. So a lot of them are going to have bunk beds. So you want to look for ones that don't have bunk beds. Trust me on this. Maybe it's got great light. Like you can tell in the pictures that it's very light filled. We need lots of good lighting for our crafting, so that's important. Maybe it's got a screened in porch. So in Charleston, in like the spring and fall, you could get away with putting a crafter out on a screened in porch. I would be comfortable out there sitting on a screened in porch doing my craft work. In the summer and winter, maybe not so much, right? You also want to look at off times, right? So you're not going to be scheduling this at peak time on the Charleston beach, right? Or a winter cabin or something, like you're going to have to look for those off times to get good deals. So once you've got your pros and your cons of your location, you definitely want to look for open living spaces, big tables, especially if they already have several big tables. So I love a space that has, they've got a big table in the kitchen and a big dining room table. Maybe they've also got a bar top area, so I know I can serve bar top. I can do all the food and serve it there, but people can be working at the tables, which is great. It's a very cozy, intimate setting. So you want to make sure that when people RSVP that they understand, like you might be sharing a room or a bed. You might, that you have a good mix of people and everybody's going to get along and be part of the get along gang. I did have one lady who was not part of the get along gang, and she left. She left the retreat early a couple of years ago, and I think that everyone else was just they were a little. We were rowdy, and it was a rowdy group, and so this year my mix looks different, and I think everyone is not rowdy and a little more get along gangy. And so I'm a little more careful now when I curate this. And when people have friends that are coming, I definitely chat with them, message with them, whatever, get to know them a little better. But, you put 10, 20 women in a location and you're going to have some, there's going to be some differences for sure. So navigating that carefully is important. But looking for open space, looking for that, looking for multiple bathrooms. Also important when traveling with women. So make sure that whatever location you pick has enough bathrooms for everybody. All right, so some other notes I have is, again, assess that price, right? Make sure that you've planned everything out so that you don't lose money on this event. We want you to make money, and we want you to make sales on it, right? That's really important. Now, the swag bag that you pick, I think, is really important because I usually sell a retreat in a box. So my goal is to fill the retreats up, and then I'll take the same set of projects that I know I can package and send, right, that aren't really reliant on maybe a particular stamp set, right? They could sub in any kind of sentiments they have. And then I will go ahead and sell a retreat in a box as well. So those I price for the price plus shipping and a little bit of prep usually. So, if my swag bag's usually $50 of product, right, I'm going to probably tack on $5 for prep and then another 10 for shipping. So let's say it's a $65, $70 retreat in a box, especially if I'm going to include all the little seat treats or pillow gifts. I'm going to make sure that I've got my cost covered. I usually use Memories and More as my swag bag because it's independent and because they can work on it there or they can work on it at home. A lot of times people come to retreat and they have very specific things that they want to work on. But sometimes people come and they're brand new and they only are going to work on what I brought them. So I want to give them enough projects and enough ideas, but I also want to give them product that they could use independently or that they could go home and work on the projects. So this spring I'll be doing the abstract beauty, note cards, the paper, the embellishment pack, all of that, and we'll be making some really pretty projects with that. And then I try to tie in a few other sweets or things with the other little seat treats so that they get to see some other stuff from the catalog. Mine are timed in March, so post-celebration. I do host bingo as part of my retreat usually. And these 2 retreats I have in the spring are smaller. They're back-to-back, but they're going to be the same projects, 2 different locations, one here in Texas and one in Charleston. And then I'll do a retreat to go as well. So it should be a good, a month for me in February business-wise to be able to order all those supplies. And then hopefully in March, I can do some order incentives or things that would get them excited to place some orders. Any questions about retreats and small retreat planning? I think it's really, it's been a great business boom for me. It's really helped my business in terms of my sales, because sales were something that I needed a little bit more of. And as we moved areas, trying to find new customers, is always tough. And it's been even tougher in a pandemic, but the craft fairs have helped for sure. So hopefully that's helpful. And if you have questions, let me know. Feel free to message me. I'm happy to do that. And I might strip down a version of my planning spreadsheet and put it in the group for everybody, because I have a feeling I'll get asked some questions about that. So I might strip out some like prices and details and stuff, but I'll try to make it rough and understandable. But that's where I track my attendees, my budget, my potential locations. So I have one spreadsheet with multiple tabs, my menu, my supplies to bring. It is a lot harder. That's the other question I get asked a lot, is how do you bring stuff when you're somewhere in another state? So I usually source local stuff. So I'm not going to a place where I don't know anybody. So I've got some friends there. And so I was like, hey, can you bring a table and chairs? Or can I borrow your Stampin' Cut and Boss machine or whatever? I usually take one suitcase full of supplies, fly Southwest, and then the other suitcase has clothes, and swag bags usually. Last year, I think I took the swag bags in like a big carry-on. Because I didn't want them to get injured. I think this year the swag bags are probably a little sturdier, and I'll probably make my seat treats a little sturdier too, so that they don't get, messed up. Yes, definitely true, Candy. If you're willing to start small, it can grow as big as you want it. And I think that's very true. I started with like 8 people, and we've now, we hit our capacity at this new location at 14, and then we'll do another one next fall at the place in Temple. And I have a feeling we will sell out there too. And I think it's 30 is what we can fit there. So I think it's going to be, I think it's great. And I think that everybody hosts a different kind of retreat in terms of feel and projects and style and personality. And I think that that's really important, to realize that there's a space and place for you in this retreat situation. Just some thoughts and ideas from me. Hopefully this was helpful to everybody. If it's something you never thought about, think about it. It could open up some really cool opportunities for you. And it could help you meet other people in your area who are crafters. Both of the crafting places that are close to us, I've now met them because they're crafty and they own this craft retreat location. And now they're starting to introduce me to some of the people who come to their other retreats, right? So you start to expand, with those relationships. And that's really helpful in your area too, especially if you're local. But all right, well, let me know if you have any questions. Feel free to comment down below. I'm happy to help. And feel free to tag me in any questions you have, and I will do my best to answer them. But thanks so much, guys. I hope you have a wonderful day. Keep warm for all of you experiencing the chilly weather. And I will talk to you later. Bye, y'all.